أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. So I wanted to do a little bit of revision. I've been trying to actually think of a few things because I just feel that sometimes I feel that maybe the durus are a bit disjointed because we are alternating between hadith and seerah, so it loses continuity, and I'm just wondering that if that affects understanding what's going on in seerah, because with hadith obviously we're going from one hadith to another, so usually we have a topic, we cover it and complete it, and then we move on to the next one. With seerah it's like something continuous, so I need to know if that's affecting your ability to follow seerah, or if it's okay and you're able to catch up with previous durus and keep in touch with where we are and what we're doing. But at the moment what I'm going to try and do is just at least with the current topic that we're dealing with, which is Badr, I'm just going to start revising it, but it's going to take me some time to get all the way to the end. So I'm just going to go, little by little from the beginning, just by asking you questions. And they're going to be, very unexpected questions. So it's different aspects of the seerah that I'm trying to touch on. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the same things that I will ask you over and over again. So every time I revise, I want to just touch on slightly different things, just to see, how well you guys can retain what we're doing so far. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions, and then we'll go on to, trying to cover some new matter, inshallah, today. Okay, so what tribe did Abu Jahl belong to? So you're going to have to start remembering names and tribe names, and you will have to start making some connections, and also names of places, geographical identification and things like that, because this is all very important with the seerah, studying seerah. So anyone, you can either write in the chat box or you can answer me. What tribe did Abu Jahl belong to? Okay, so he belonged to the tribe of Banu Makhzum. Okay, so there are three main tribes whose names you must remember. So one is the tribe of the Prophet ﷺ, which is very good, Banu Hashim. The second is Banu Makhzum, which is the tribe that Abu Jahl belonged to. And the third one is the tribe that Abu Sufyan belonged to. Does anybody know what tribe he belonged to? No. Not Banu Nadir. So the Banu Nadir were a Jewish tribe. Now we're talking about the tribes in Mecca. So Abu Sufyan belonged to a tribe called Banu Umayyah. Okay? So you have Banu Makhzum, Banu Hashim, and Banu Umayyah. These are, you could say, like at least you should remember these three main tribal names. Okay, and of course there's lots of other tribes, and then there's lots of sub-tribes. So these tribes break into smaller tribes. Okay. So again, these are like some questions from, you know, many durus ago. So I'm just going to try and see if you can remember any of these things. Who was the fastest rider selected by Abu Sufyan to carry the news to the Quraysh, to carry the news to Makkah, that the caravan is under risk of attack? Yes, Damdam ibn Amr al-Ghifari. Very good. Okay, how was ambushing caravans justified at that time? So, you know, we would think that this is like highway robbery, right? So how was this justified? How was it not an ignoble thing to do? How was it still a, you know, how was it justified? Because obviously, as we know, right, that the Prophet ﷺ is ordering these skirmishes. Right, so the very big caravan that goes to you know, where we start talking about Battle of Badr, that very big caravan, yes, that carried wealth and belonging from Makkah. But what had happened was, when the Muhajirun left Makkah and they fled to Medina, they had to leave behind all their possessions, their property, and basically everything had to be left behind. And so that was repossessed by whoever was remaining in Makkah. So the commodities that are on this caravan, they don't only belong to the Quraysh, but they also belong to the Muhajirun, because they had to leave their things behind. So in that sense, they had a right to these things, because these things are actually theirs. But other than you know, this big caravan which leads eventually to Badr, how were these skirmishes justified? Like other conflict that was taking place. So if you remember, the Muslims were persecuted in Makkah. Were they allowed to fight while they were in Makkah? Were they allowed to even retaliate? No, that's right. So they were not allowed to fight. They were not allowed to retaliate. They just had to be patient. So now when they have moved to Medina, they were tortured and persecuted a great deal in Makkah. So now when they are in a safe place, and you know, you could say they are in the cradle of Islam now, because like you could say like an Islamic society is starting up in Medina. So now they are making their presence known, and it's almost like they are avenging themselves. So they feel like they have the right to do this now, because they were oppressed and beaten up and tortured, and they went through a lot of difficulty in Makkah. So now they feel that they have the right to make up for it this way, by, you know, by causing the Quraysh any kind of loss. It's like they are avenging themselves, right? So that's how, you know, this kind of behavior was justified. Okay, when we come to the Battle of Badr, who was really pushing for the battle? Because remember, when Abu Sufyan, he took another alternative route to leave, to go back to Makkah when he's coming down from Sham. He takes the route towards the Red Sea, and he avoids Badr, and he goes through there. And then he realizes that he's escaped. He's escaped the you know, the area where the caravan could have been ambushed. So now he realizes that, okay, everything is safe, we're safe. So he is reluctant to fight, and he says that just go back. We don't need an army, we don't need people, we don't need defense anymore, because the caravan is safe. His main purpose is to save and protect the caravan. It's not to fight. If you notice throughout the story of Badr, nobody is keen on fighting. Not Abu Sufyan, not the Muslims, not the Prophet ﷺ, even the Quraysh of Makkah, right? They're not keen on fighting. A lot of them, they are very, very reluctant, and they would rather not fight and stay behind. The person who is rooting for this and pushing for this, as one of the sisters has answered, is Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl is the one who's really pushing for this. Who was very reluctant? Well, there were a number of people who were very reluctant. Name one person who was very reluctant to go on this battle and who had to be incited and nudged by Abu Jahl to go and fight. He's one of the leaders, but he was very reluctant to fight. He just wanted to stay behind. Again, these are important names that you need to try and remember. No. So one of them was Utbah bin Rabi'ah. Okay, there's another place in the Seerah where we hear the name of Utbah bin Rabi'ah. And Umayyah, yes, very good. Umayyah was also very reluctant to go. Do you know why Umayyah was reluctant to go? Umayyah bin Khalaf? Anyone? Why was Umayyah bin Khalaf reluctant to go for the Battle of Badr? So the Prophet ﷺ had threatened, you could say that he would be punished or killed. And so he was petrified that whatever the Prophet ﷺ says is going to happen. So you can see the contradiction in the behavior of the Quraysh. So they believe everything the Prophet ﷺ says. They have 100% faith in him. But at the same time, they won't believe the message that he has brought. They won't believe that, that when he preaches Islam and then that when he teaches them about Allah, that he's telling them the truth. When he talks about Jannah and Nar, that he's telling them the truth. When he talks about Tawheed and leaving idols and worshipping Allah alone, that he's speaking the truth. They're reluctant to believe that, but they believe, they believe everything else he says because they know that he's very honest. So going back to Utbah ibn Rabi'ah, can anyone remember or remind me another time in the Seerah where we mention the name of Utbah ibn Rabi'ah? It's a very, very famous incident. Okay, so if you remember the incident at Taif, when the Prophet ﷺ was pelted with stones, and then he comes out and he sits down under a tree, and that's where he makes dua, and there's two brothers who hear him. I think they hear him crying or they hear him making dua, and they come and they give him grapes. So one of those people was Utbah ibn Rabi'ah and his brother, who came and gave the Prophet ﷺ the grapes. Okay. All right. So the next question I wanted to ask you, there's another person whose name I want you to remember, and his name is Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt. So the previous person I mentioned was Utbah bin Rabi'a, and this one is Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt. And Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt is one of the worst people, actually, and one of the worst opponents of Islam, because he is the one who volunteers to throw the entrails of the camel onto the back of the Prophet ﷺ while he's in sujood. So you remember that incident when the Prophet ﷺ is in... Because the Quraysh didn't used to make sajda. This was not the position of prayer that they would assume. So this was something that they would make fun of. When the Muslims would go into sajda, this was something they would mock and make fun of. And so when the Prophet ﷺ went into sajda, and I think it was Abu Jahl who said, who will go and do this filthy job? And Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt, he said, I will do it. And he took the entrails and he threw it on the Prophet ﷺ. He was one of the two people who are executed at the end of the Battle of Badr. So with the Battle of Badr, you had prisoners of war and you had people who were killed in the battle, but you didn't have any prisoners who were killed, except two people, and one of them was Uqba ibn Abi Mu'ayt. Okay. And the last question I want to ask you before I start some new material is, can you name the tribe who abandoned the army just before the fight? Can you name because there was about 1,300 people in the army of the Quraysh, and then there was about 300 to 350 people who deflected, and they decided they don't want to carry on because, like I said, nobody wanted to fight. Not even the Quraysh, they were reluctant to fight. They just wanted to save their belongings and their caravan. And once that was done and taken care of, they didn't want to carry on with bloodshed and murder. But Abu Jahl keeps pushing for it, and there are some people in some tribes who don't come under his pressure, and they still decide to leave the battle, leave the ranks of the battle. So do you remember the name of the tribe who deflected and left? And there was about 300 to 350 people. Yes, very good. Banu Zuhra. Yeah, Banu Zuhra. Very good. Okay. So I tried to revise, some portion of the Seerah. There's still a lot more that needs to be revised. But what I will do is I will just do it little by little, just to, keep bringing it to your attention. But at the same time, we need some time to cover new material as well. Okay. So if you remember in the last dars, I told you a couple of stories of the incidents in the battlefield. Do you remember whose stories we talked about, or whose killing or death we talked about? Very good. Yes, that's right. That was the last thing we talked about. So who was he killed by? Yeah, that's right. So the first two people who start the attack on him, who are they? Very good. Yeah, very good. That's right. Those two brothers, which tribe did they, or what group of people did they belong to? Yes, very good. They were from the Ansar. And then Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, when he does the final deed and takes his head off, he takes it to the Prophet ﷺ and he presents it to him. What was another name that the Prophet ﷺ used to refer to Abu Jahl as? Yes, very good. So he used to say that every nation has a Fir'aun, and Abu Jahl is the Fir'aun of of this nation. Right, so he had he obviously had a very, very bad reputation. Did I mention to you the incident where the Prophet ﷺ, he ordered the corpses of 24 of the leaders of Quraysh to be thrown into the wells of Badr? Did I mention this incident to you? I haven't mentioned that yet. Okay. Okay, so this is a narration by Abu Talha, where the Prophet ﷺ, he narrates, on the day of Badr, the Prophet ﷺ ordered that the corpses of 24 leaders of the Quraysh be thrown into one of the dirty, dry wells of Badr. It was a habit of the Prophet ﷺ, that whenever he conquered some people, he used to stay at the battlefield for 3 nights. So on the 3rd day of the Battle of Badr, he ordered that his she-camel be saddled. Then he set out, and his companions followed him, saying among themselves, definitely he, i.e. the Prophet ﷺ, is proceeding for some great purpose. When he halted at the edge of the well, he addressed the corpses of the Quraysh by their names and their fathers' names. O so-and-so, son of so-and-so, and O so-and-so, son of so-and-so. Would it have pleased you if you had obeyed Allah and His Apostle, alayhi salatu wasalam? We have found true what our Lord promised us. Have you too found true what your Lord promised you? Umar said, O Allah's Apostle, alayhi salatu wasalam, you are speaking to bodies that have no souls. So basically he's saying that you're speaking to these bodies, they are just bodies, they can't hear you. So the Prophet ﷺ said, by him in whose hand Muhammad's soul is, you do not hear what I say better than they do. So he's saying that they hear just as well as you can hear me. And Qatada, who is explaining this statement, he said that Allah brought them to life again to let them hear him, to reprimand them and slight them and take revenge over them and cause them to feel remorseful and regretful. So this was at the end of Badr, when now they're like taking the casualties and they're looking at who's been killed and they've taken captives, etc. So at that time he went to the edge of the well of Badr, and he ordered 24 of the leaders of the Quraysh, their bodies to be thrown into this well, because these wells, they were not all wet wells. Can you all still hear me? You can, okay, because I just got a message, so I thought that maybe what was I saying? These wells, they were not all wet wells, they were dry wells, because they had just sort of been like abandoned and they'd been filled with rocks and dust and things like that. So he ordered 24 of those bodies to be thrown into one of these dry wells. And this is a very, very well-known incident at Badr. And so what happened is that the Prophet ﷺ orders their bodies to be thrown into this well. On the 3rd day of the Battle of Badr, he ordered for his camel to be saddled, and he went out, and his companions followed him. And because they said that if he's going out, he's definitely going for a purpose. And so they follow him and they see what he does. So he gets to the well and he stands at the edge of the well, and he starts speaking to the dead bodies who are in the well, because remember, he had these bodies thrown into the well. And he starts speaking to them specifically by name. So he refers to them by their names and their father's names, that oh so and so, son of so and so. And then he asks them that, did you find Allah's promise true? And he says, we found Allah's promise true. And of course he also says, would it have pleased you if you had obeyed Allah and his apostles? So he's almost like, he's almost, you could say, like causing them to feel more regret. So they have met their end, right? And their end has not been good. They have died on kufr. They have died fighting Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is one of the worst ways that you can die. So they have met an evil end. And so it's almost like rhetorical, or when you are almost like taunting someone and saying that, did you find the promise of Allah true? Because they used to deny these things, right? They used to deny the Prophet ﷺ, they used to deny Akhirah, they used to deny Jannah and Nar. So now the Prophet ﷺ is almost like causing them to regret their denial even more. That, you were in denial. Now did you find, what Allah promised you to be true? And he's telling them that we found what Allah promised us to be true. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, gives them victory, and, they get the success that, they put their trust in Allah, and Allah gave them what, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised them, that his support, his help and victory. And so Umar at that point says to the Prophet ﷺ that, they can't hear you. You're speaking to dead bodies. It's almost like he's saying that, what's the point of this? So the Prophet ﷺ says to him that they can hear, you do not hear what I say better than they do. So he's saying that, and they're hearing, they are able to hear what I'm saying just as well, if not better than how well you are able to hear what I'm saying. So that's what he's saying. Is that clear? And so so Qatada just explained that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he made the bodies able to listen to the words of the Prophet ﷺ. He brought them to life just to hear the words of the Prophet ﷺ, to reprimand them, and to further increase their punishment, and to make them feel more remorseful and more regretful. Because there is a point of contention because of this story, where people say that, that the dead people can hear, whereas we know that the dead do not hear. But it was just specifically in this incident where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replaced either their life or their hearing to be able to hear what the Prophet ﷺ is saying and feel more regretful. It's just specific to this incident. Okay? Is that clear? Yeah, okay, all right, alhamdulillah. All right. Now, there's another story that I wanted to tell you. If I can find it, just give me a minute. Okay. So now this is the story of a famous fighter amongst the mushrikeen whose name was Abul Kirsh, which means the one with a pot belly. So he was a bit heavy and fat. And he was fighting on the battlefield on the day of Badr, but he was covered in armor from head to toe, to the extent that no part of his body was uncovered except his eye. And so Zubair bin al-Awwam radiyallahu anhu, he attacked him, and of course, like I said, he was covered completely in armor. So what he did was he aimed his javelin and he threw it on his eye. And so it went up to his eye, but because of all the armor that he's got on, the javelin is not able to go through. And so what he did was, you can imagine when this hits him, he falls down. So Zubair came and he stepped on the javelin with his foot and forced it deep into the head of Abul Kirsh. And of course this kills Abul Kirsh. And then when he pulls it out, the blade was bent because of the strength that Zubair had, and the strength with which he pushed it in. It bends the blade at the end of the, where the blade has gone into his eye. And this javelin, the reason this story is even important for you to know is that this javelin, it becomes very important to the Prophet ﷺ. And it's almost like a thing of pride for the Prophet ﷺ. And so he asks to keep this javelin as a souvenir. And so the Prophet ﷺ keeps it until he passes away. And then when he passes away, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu takes it and he keeps it. And then when Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu passes away, Umar asks for it and he takes it. And after Umar radiallahu anhu passes away, Zubair takes it back. But then Uthman radiallahu anhu asks for it and he's the Khalifa. So Zubair gives it back to Uthman radiallahu anhu. And then after Uthman radiallahu anhu, Ali radiallahu anhu keeps it. So this is this javelin that has been bent at one end because of Zubair's attack on Abul Kirsh. And then Ali takes it. And then when Ali passes away, the son of Zubair takes it and keeps it. So this was the story of Abul Kirsh and the javelin that Zubair ibn Awam stabs in his eye. Another story that I wanted to mention was the story of Abul Bukhtari. And Abul Bukhtari was a noble man from the men of Quraysh. And although he was a disbeliever, he was not a cruel man. So you have some of the disbelievers who were kind-hearted. And then you have some who were really, had a very great deal of hatred and enmity towards Islam. So Abul Bukhtari was one of the people actually who, remember when we were talking about the boycott, when the Muslims were boycotted and you could say condemned to this valley for 3 to 4 years. And then there were 5 people who stood up and spoke out against this boycott. And then they said that, we need to finish this boycott. And when they went to the Kaaba to remove there was like a piece of paper or a document or a scroll on which they had written the rules of the boycott. So they wanted to remove this paper, and that paper had already been eaten by ants. You remember this story? So one of the people who spoke out against this boycott and who wanted this boycott to end was Abul Bukhtari. So Abul Bukhtari, you can see although he was, one of the noblemen of the Quraysh, but he had a soft, you could say like a soft spot for the Muslims. And so the Prophet ﷺ, you see, you learn from these things, these stories and anecdotes in the Seerah. You see that when there is a disbeliever, but he is kind, or he is helpful, or he is nice, then you have to deal with him differently. You have to deal with him different to how you deal with other disbelievers. So the Prophet ﷺ, he was very grateful to him for supporting the end of that boycott and for speaking out for the Muslims. And so that teaches us that if there are disbelievers who do good to us, we should reciprocate that goodness and that kindness. And so the Prophet ﷺ had ordered that if you see Abu al-Bukhtari, don't kill him and don't fight with him. So one of the Ansar, he saw Abu al-Bukhtari in the battlefield, and he told him that that Rasulullah ﷺ has told us not to kill you or fight you. So Abu al-Bukhtari said, what about my companion? So there was somebody with him. And the Ansar said that I cannot spare your companion. I've only been told to spare you. So the good man that he was, Bukhtari, he said that he will fight to protect his companion. He's not just going to accept the protection for himself and let his companion be killed. So he put up a fight, and when he put up a fight, the Ansari was forced to fight Bukhtari, and Bukhtari was killed. And then the Ansari went back to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said to him, I swear by him who sent you with the truth, I did try to take him prisoner to bring him to you, but he insisted on fighting me, so I fought back and killed him. And it was unfortunate that, he didn't have a chance to come back to the Prophet ﷺ or be brought back to the Prophet ﷺ, because he was a good and kind man. So that was the story of Abu al-Bukhtari. Okay, so there is a couple of issues I want to tell you about that happened towards the end of Badr. Now, the thing with this Battle of Badr, again, is like we faced the same kind of issues we faced when we were talking about the Mi'raj. So there are some things, which we don't know 100% the chronological order of those incidents and those stories, but we try and piece the story together, the best that we can. And I will quiz you on some more questions about the battle next time, inshallah, as well. And I might, if I come across some more stories in between, I might, throw them in between, even though we're going to talk about now the end of the battle. So what happens at the end of the Battle of Badr is that the Prophet ﷺ, he sends 2 people into Medina to inform the people of Medina about the results of the Battle of Badr. Who are these 2 people? Abdullah bin Rawaha and Zayd bin Haritha. Okay, can you tell me what is Zayd bin Haritha famously known for? It's like a well-known thing about Zayd bin Haritha. I don't think that was Zayd bin Haritha. Okay, anyway, let's just carry on now. So Abdullah bin Rawaha and Zayd bin Haritha are sent to deliver the news to the people of Medina. Abdullah bin Rawaha goes to the upper region of Medina and delivers the news in the house of each Ansar, and Zayd bin Haritha goes to the center of Medina to deliver the news. So one of them goes, you could say, to the peripheral areas, and one of them goes to the center, and they're both doing the same task, which is to deliver the news of the results of the Battle of Badr. Now, you can imagine that this news is not easy for people to just accept and acknowledge, because they know that it was only 300 people from their side, about 300 people, and they were up against an army of over 1,000 people. So it's almost like you brace yourself for the outcome of something like this, right? So Zayd bin Haritha was riding on the camel of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As he entered, he was naming all the people who were killed during the battle. So he was saying, Utbah bin Rabi'a was killed, Umayyah bin Khalaf was killed, Abu Jahl was killed. So he's naming all the big names, the chieftains of the Quraysh. So So people are finding this very difficult to believe. And when Zayd was mentioning the names of the famous leaders of the Quraysh who were killed, the Munafiqeen and the Jews, they said, this man doesn't know what he's talking about. He's confused and he has run away from the battlefield. And Muhammad himself was killed, and the evidence is that Zayd is riding his camel. And this is the news they started to spread. So they started to... Can everybody hear me? Because I'm getting some messages that my voice is breaking up. It's clear, yeah? Okay. So what the Jews and the Munafiqeen, which is their favorite thing to do, is to create uncertainty, to create doubt, to create confusion amongst the people. So they're saying that, oh, these people, they've lost their mind. They're saying that all these leaders have been killed because they're thinking this cannot be. It's like, it's you could say, really, it is unbelievable that this small number of people have gone and killed all the main leaders of the Quraysh. So they're saying that basically this man, he's lost his mind, and also because he's riding the Prophet ﷺ's camel, so they're thinking that even the Prophet ﷺ has been killed, and he's just he's spreading fake news, and the evidence is that he's riding the Prophet ﷺ's camel. And Usama and Uthman radiallahu anhuma had stayed behind to look after the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, Ruqayya. And so Usama goes to his father, Zayd. So Usama is the son of Zayd. And he says to him, he says, "Oh father, is the news that you're delivering true?" Because even they're finding it really difficult to believe. And so he said to his son, he said, yes, that this is the correct news that I'm giving. And similarly, people would go up to Abdullah bin Rawaha and ask him that the news that Zayd is delivering, is this correct? And he would also, affirm that the news that is being delivered is correct. And they said to the people, they said that the Prophet ﷺ is going to bring the captives, soon or tomorrow. So because remember, the Prophet ﷺ has sent these people ahead to just go and give them the good news that they've been successful. So the Prophet ﷺ and all the other cavalry, they haven't reached Medina yet. So the next day, the Prophet ﷺ, he enters Medina with the prisoners, and the prisoners are kept in a specific location, and the prisoners are obviously in a very humiliated state, right? So their hands are tied up, and some of their hands are tied to their necks. And, they are obviously in a very humiliated and bad situation. And so Sauda, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, she saw Suhail bin Amr, and she saw that his hands were tied to his neck. And she said, "Why didn't you die as noble men?" So basically she's saying, why didn't you fight? Why did you allow yourselves to be captured? Now, when she says this, it's implying that she is encouraging him to have fought the Prophet ﷺ, which is almost blasphemous. So the Prophet ﷺ, he overlooks that statement, and he says to Sauda, he says, "Are you asking them to fight Allah's Messenger?" alayhi salatu wassalam. And immediately she realizes her mistake, and she says, "O Messenger of Allah, when I saw him in that state, I couldn't help but make such a statement." Because remember, these are all people of the same, you could say, community or clan. So they're seeing their own people in this humiliated state. So it's really tugging at their hearts. But then she has to remind herself that although we are from the same, family or clan or tribe, but Islam has made a distinction between us now. So there is a distinction of a Muslim and a kafir. So, now there's a distinction, and they have to be aware of that. So, so she apologizes to the Prophet ﷺ, and she says that she just became overwhelmed by her emotions when she saw him in this humiliated state. And you can see, through this little narration, how humiliated these noble, so-called nobles of the Quraysh were. And similarly, they have to deliver the same news to the Quraysh in Makkah. So the Prophet ﷺ sends the news to Medina, and the Quraysh send the news to Makkah. And who did they use? They used a man called Al-Haythuman Khuzai. Al-Haythuman Khuzai rushes into Makkah and mentions all the names of the Quraysh leaders, or the names of the Quraysh who have been killed in this battle. And Safwan ibn Umayyah, who is sitting and listening, he says, again, they find it very difficult to believe that, these are our top people. They could not have been killed. It's like disbelief. It's like incomprehensible that this could have even happened. So Safwan, who's sitting and listening to this news as he's delivering it, and he's rattling off the names of all the people who've been killed, he says, this man has lost his mind. He said, ask him about me to make sure he isn't crazy. So he's saying that ask him what happened to Safwan, and see, if he says that Safwan is also dead, because he's thinking that this man's completely lost his mind, and he's just saying that everybody's dead. So they went and they asked him, they said, what happened to Safwan? So this man, Al-Haythuman Khuzai, he said, Safwan is sitting right there, and I have seen the death of his father and his brother with my own eyes. That's when it, like they say, the penny drops, and they realize that what has actually happened, that what this man is saying is real and it's true, and that all these people have been killed, and that Makkah has received a huge, massive blow. I forgot to mention one other incident back in Medina amongst the Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ, he stops at a place called Roha to receive, congratulations from all the people who are coming to visit him, to congratulate him on his success in Badr. And so one of the Ansar, he says, what are you congratulating us for? We have only met old, bold men like camels awaiting slaughter, and we slaughtered them. So he's basically, you could say, almost like, he's being arrogant or boastful about it, that this was not a big deal, this was a doddle for us, to have won this battle. So the Prophet ﷺ, he corrects him, and he stops him, and he says that he tells him not to say that, because the people who were killed were not small people. They were chiefs. They were the leaders of the Quraysh. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying, what we have just done is not a small thing. It's a very big thing we have just achieved. And it was not the easiest of things. And then the Prophet ﷺ tells him that they were not just old men who didn't know how to fight, because these are the chiefs, so they would have been experts in fighting. They would have been experts in warfare, in the skills of cavalry, etc. So they would have known what they're doing. But the Prophet ﷺ reminds him, and he says it was Allah who sent angels to assist us and to help us, and that the Quraysh were strong, and had it not been for Allah's help, the Muslims would have lost. So he reminds him that this victory and success is not just because of us and our skill and who we are or what we did, but it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is very important for us to remember as well, all the time, in every situation that we are in, for us to remember that whatever we achieve and wherever we reach in our lives, it is a huge blessing and a ni'mah from Allah. Because without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help and his assistance and his constant blessings and his rahmah, we would not be able to do anything. And so going back to Makkah now, so we have Haythuman Khuzai, who delivers the news, and people are finding it very difficult to believe. Abu Lahab, and we will end with the story of Abu Lahab, inshallah. Abu Lahab did not go to fight at Badr, it is not clear why he did not go, whether it was just fear or whether he was not well, or Allahu Alam what it was. But what he did was, he sent a man on his behalf to go and fight at Badr. And this man's name was Abu Lahab sent someone on his behalf to fight at Badr. Now this story is narrated by somebody called Rafi, who was a servant of Al-Abbas. That's the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ. And he was a servant of Al-Abbas and their household. So Rafi, Al-Abbas and al-Fadl, who is the wife of Al-Abbas, they were all Muslim. And Rafi used to make arrows. And one day he was sitting in this area around the Kaaba, and he was sharpening arrows. And Abu Lahab was sitting with his back towards Rafi. And so Rafi is sitting and sharpening arrows. Abu Lahab is sitting ahead of Rafi, but with his back towards Rafi. And this one of the fighters of the Quraysh, who has just returned from battle, just turns up. And he's approaching Abu Lahab. So Abu Lahab says to that fighter, "Come and tell us the news of what happened." So the man came and said, "As soon as the fighting started, we handed ourselves over to them to be killed and to be taken as captives. But I don't blame them for it, because we were facing men in white clothes on horses between the heavens and the earth, and nothing could stop them." So this man, he's reporting the news of the battle to Abu Lahab, but he's also telling him where the credit lies. So he's saying that it's not just these Muslims that they defeated us, but we could not have been but defeated, because we're fighting these men on horses between the heavens and the earth, So he's basically explaining to him that he doesn't know himself what this is, but he's basically telling him that, we were fighting with these angels. So nothing could stop them, and nothing could have stopped this defeat. So basically he's saying the credit doesn't go to the Muslims, it goes to this other force that was, present in the battlefield, which they didn't understand what it was. When Rafi heard the description that he gave of these men in white clothes sitting on horses between the heavens and the earth, he immediately says, "In the name of Allah, those are angels. Bismillah, that they are angels." Abu Lahab turned around and punched Rafi in the face. And Rafi started to fight back, but Abu Lahab was much stronger than him. So Abu Lahab ended up sitting on top of Rafi and beating him up, like pulverizing him. And Fadl, as you know that, he is their servant. She comes, she hears all this commotion, and she comes in, and she says to Abu Lahab, she says, "Are you taking advantage of the fact that his master is not around?" And she takes a metal rod and she smacks Abu Lahab on the head with this rod so that he stops hitting Rafi. And then Abu Lahab gets up and he leaves because he's just been hit on the head. And Rafi says that a week later, Abu Lahab caught a disease because of which he died. And this disease was a kind of disease that people would try and stay away from, and they were very scared that it is contagious and it's something that they will catch. So if anybody got this disease, they would stay really far away from that person. And when Abu Lahab died from this disease that nobody wanted to be near, his body was left in his house for 3 days to rot, and nobody would go near his body or his house. And obviously his body started to decompose, and it starts to, the smell gets worse, and the stench and everything is just getting worse. And so nobody wanted to bury him. Nobody wanted to touch him because he had this disease. And so the people of the Quraysh, they went up to the two sons of Abu Lahab, and they said to them that, do you not have shame? Your father is dead, and his body has been lying in the house for 3 days, and you haven't buried him? So they're like reminding them, that what's up with you guys? So they said that they were afraid of that disease and they didn't want to go near him. And so what they eventually did was, obviously they have pressure from the people now that this body is decomposing, the smell is getting worse, and something needs to be done with this. So they took his body and they dragged it and they flung it against a wall, and from far away they just threw some stones to cover his body. They did not even drag him into a grave or put him into a grave or anything like that. They just basically stuck him against a wall, threw some stones at him to cover his entire body, and they just left him like that. And this was the humiliation that he suffered even after his death. So he had such a bad end and such a bad death that even his own family and his own sons didn't want to do anything for him. And one of the things that was very, very painful that was done to the Quraysh in Makkah when they received this news of the victory at Badr and their losses, the Quraysh were told that no one is allowed to cry in public when they get the news of the defeat at Badr and all the losses at Badr. So because every household has received a loss. Remember the dream of Atiqa, where she sees that when this thing falls and explodes, the shrapnel or whatever thing that comes out of this this ball or whatever it is that is thrown, it enters, bits of this enter every household. And so every household has suffered some loss at Badr. But they're told that nobody's allowed to cry. Nobody's allowed to mourn in public. And so what do you think was the reason that they were not allowed to cry? Just making sure everybody's awake. And I'm not just speaking to myself. So why do you think that they have been told that they shouldn't cry? Yes, but when they cry, what is that going to do if they were to cry? Anybody else? Yes, that's right. So it's almost like acknowledging that you have not only been defeated, but it's such a bad loss that, you're grieving. And that grieving is going to make the other party feel happy, right? Like when you beat someone and they're really upset about it, it just adds to your happiness because you just think that, okay, not only did I beat them, but they're actually feeling the defeat, right? So they did not want the Prophet ﷺ and his people to find out that they're actually suffering and that this defeat has actually hurt them. They didn't want that to be known. So they're just going to go around with brave faces that, basically this defeat has not really affected us. It's not really done anything. It's not a big blow. Whereas it is a big blow, right? It has affected them. And so the other thing that nobody was allowed to talk about was the issue of ransoming the prisoners. So they didn't want the Prophet ﷺ to know that there is a possibility that they're going to try and ransom their prisoners. Otherwise, the Prophet ﷺ is going to raise the price of the prisoners. So nobody was allowed to talk about that either. And Ibn Kathir comments on this issue, and he said, I observed that Allah's forcing them to forego mourning for their dead was part of the totality of the punishment of those of them that remained alive at that time. So why do you think it's a punishment for them not being allowed to cry and grieve and mourn their dead? Why do you think this is a punishment? Or how is it a punishment? So if you think about it, that let's say you have experienced something really severe and something bad, and I tell you that I know this is really bad, but you're not allowed to cry. How is that going to affect you? Exactly. Weeping for the dead, it contributes to the recovery of the grieving heart. Imagine that somebody says to you that I'm going to punch you really hard, but you don't cry and you don't make a sound. That just adds to the pain. So basically, they are just further punishing themselves. And this is really actually a punishment from Allah on them, right? Because whatever they decide to do, it is by the will of Allah. And so they inflict this further harm on themselves. So they've already suffered such a big loss, and then they further harm themselves by saying that we're not even going to grieve, we're not going to cry, we're not going to we're not going to relieve ourselves of this burden. We're going to carry this burden. We're going to just, keep it, in our hearts like that. And so, there's a story of a man called Al-Aswad Abdul Muttalib, who was inflicted by the loss of 3 of his sons. And he was an old man, he was already blind, and he wasn't allowed to mourn their death. He wasn't allowed to cry for them or grieve for them or anything like that. And so one night he heard a woman weeping. So he said, go and see if mourning has become permissible. So he's eager to cry and lighten his burden. So he says, find out, maybe we've been allowed to mourn now, so I can cry for my sons. And so and he says, perhaps now I will be able to lament the loss of Abu Hakim, his eldest son, for I am in great pain. So they went to find out why this woman was crying, and they found out she was crying because she had lost her camel. So Aswad Abdul Muttalib said in a poetic form, is she weeping because of a camel of hers has gone astray, and so insomnia keeps her from sleeping? Do not weep over a young camel, but over Badr that ruined all hopes, over Badr and the elite of Banu Husais and Makhzum and the tribe of Abul Walid. And weep, if you weep at all, for Al-Aqil and Harith, the lions of lions, the lion of lions. Weep for them all, and do not hold back, for there is none the like of Abu Hakima. After them, it is other men who rule, and had it not been for Badr, they would not have come to lead. So basically, in a poetic form, he's just saying that, how silly this is that you're crying over, a lost animal. What we really should be doing is we should be crying for the losses that we've suffered at Badr. And so this poor old man, he wasn't even allowed to cry for his sons. And this is all happening just so that the Prophet ﷺ doesn't receive the news that the kuffar are suffering or that they are grieving. And they wanted to show that they don't really care about their dead, and they don't really care about the captives, because they worried that if they start showing that this matters to them, and the prisoners of war matter to them, and their losses matter to them, they're worried that the Prophet ﷺ is going to spike up the price, the ransom money for the prisoners, and they didn't want that to happen either. So they're just being very indifferent, as if it doesn't really matter to us. So this is all just tactical responses, just to try and reduce their losses. And as you know, the most of Surah Al-Anfal, it describes the Battle of Badr, and I think when we finish talking about the Battle of Badr, I will go back to Surah Al-Anfal and I will give you the explanation of at least some of the verses in Anfal which deal with the incidents at the Battle of Badr. And so it will just like tie in some of the incidents of the Battle of Badr with the, you know, the verses that were revealed about it. I think it's very, very important to, you know, tie in these two things together, because a lot of, you know, Seerah comes from the tafsir of the Quran. Okay, so I want to stop now, inshallah. I wanted to tell you a few more things, but inshallah we will carry on next time. I wanted to talk about how the booty is distributed, and you know, I'm going to start talking about next time from one of the verses of Anfal and how it connects to some of the issues or incidents at Badr. وسبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. I'm very sorry that, you know, this has gone on so late because we started very late. I would like to know your thoughts on changing the time to 9 p.m. Does that suit everyone, or is that difficult? You can also respond on the group if, you know, you don't want to respond here. And also I wanted to ask, how do you feel about splitting and doing alternate Wednesdays, so alternating Seerah with Hadith? Does the break in discontinuity affect your understanding of what's going on? Do you prefer we finish one topic and then go on to the next one, so we just do Seerah week after week, and when we finish that then we do Hadith? Or do you like to do this side by side? So these are a couple of things that I want to get your feedback on. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm sorry I didn't see some of your answers here in the chat box. So yeah, you guys you're on the right track, you know. So crying would have expressed acceptance of defeat, which they don't want to do. It would have shown that they are weak, which they don't want to do. They don't want the Prophet ﷺ to think that they are weak. And it also would have shown their pathetic state, which again is humiliation for them on top of humiliation. So they've lost, and on top of that they are further humiliating themselves by, you know, showing their weakness. And yes, crying or not being able to cry and holding it in, it will affect your mental health, and you are being denied relief. Very good. So those are some brilliant answers, mashallah. Yeah, alhamdulillah. So you guys all understand what's going on. Okay, so I think so far a couple of people are saying that they prefer to finish one topic and then tackle another one. Okay, so some people are suggesting if we can maybe close one topic and then go on to Hadith, and then finish the Hadith and then go on to Seerah. So I'm going to take these suggestions into consideration, and I will think about it and discuss it further, inshallah, on the group. I don't want to take your time here anymore. It's very nice of you to have turned up at this time and, you know, stayed with us until this time. Jazakallahu Khairan for attending, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this a source of expiation for us, and forgive us and mention us in a gathering better than this gathering. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reunite us with the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, and make this knowledge a sadqa jariyah for all of us. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who are nearest to Him in Jannah. I really appreciate that you, you know, from your busy schedules, you make time to come and attend this. I hope Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards you for this, and it weighs heavy in your scales, inshallah. وسبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. I will end the meeting now, inshallah, if there's no questions. Barakallahu feekum, and thank you for attending again. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.